So let's share this one. Can you see the bulk 301 redirect tool? Okay, cool. So this is probably like one of the more added value propositions of Red Tools. And so in the 1.0 version, I was using like just basic JavaScript to do all of the mapping for the URLs and finding all the patterns and stuff through the uploads. And the downside of that was I could only do a handful at a time. Like you could probably do only up to like 50 redirects. So, but I totally reworked it. I actually rebuilt it in Python, which works a lot better for just absorbing data and all that stuff. So basically how this tool works is you go to the input, the 404 error URLs, and you can paste them all in here. And then you can do upload list, and you can see the upload summary there. And then if you go to the input 200 status code URLs, you can input it manually. So type in your URLs here, or you can download it from a sitemap and then scrape it. And they should all import into this right here. So, and if there's any you want to take out, you can go here and delete it and so on. So once you hit upload list, you can hit submit. You can also upload through a CSV, and there's a sample format that you can download here. And once you hit submit, you get the 404 errors redirected to the 301 redirects. I don't know if I said that right. You get the 301 redirects from the 404 errors that you submitted. And so you can actually see a little confidence indicator here. And basically this confidence metric is measured from how much of a pattern there is between the 404 error and the 301 redirect. So let's say if you updated a blog title, and let's say it was from, maybe it was a seasonal blog title from 2024 and you updated it to 2025, you'll see a higher confidence metric from there. But whereas if you had a blog URL with a random slug on the end and you wanted to redirect it, and you never redirected it to, a similar blog where there's no other patterns that it can match to, it will just go to the homepage or maybe the blog overview page, and that you'll see a lower confidence level there. So that's essentially how this works. And then you can export the CSV there. You can also come in here and make some edits if you wanted to add more, or if you wanted to input another sitemap, whatever works. And that is the 301 redirect tool.
Dude, that's pretty sweet. First of all, it's such the worst, right? You do like the export of all the broken links, and then you could just say, "Hey, here's all the broken links. Go fix them." But like, that's a terrible experience as a agency or freelancer. And so being able to say like, "Here's the," I typically do that. I typically say, "Okay, here's a broken link. Here's where you should point it to." But that process of finding where you should point it to is the worst. It's so tedious.
Yeah, and there's so much. And sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but like the main like use case that I use this for is for all my e-commerce clients who have thousands of products. And what happens is Google will start canonical or indexing the breadcrumb URLs and all that stuff, and then they'll take down that product, and most of the time they don't even redirect that, but then you break all the other URLs associated with it, and you see all this you see this huge list in Google Search Console. So this allows you to go in and quickly make those redirect mappings super fast. And like I've been able to do thousands at a time. I have a client that has, it's something that's ridiculous, like 17,000 404 errors on their website. And I went through and I fixed all of those within like an hour just by putting them in here. And I have to break it up a little bit because it gets a little slow, like once you put in a lot. So it's better to break it up with a couple thousand at a time, but it goes so much faster.
Well, I mean, this is pretty consistent with your other tools, which I really love, which is like take something that's just like super tedious and add some automation to it. And doesn't mean it's like it's perfect 100% of the time, but boy, it gets you 80-90% of the way. Like that's a huge productivity lift, right?
Yeah.
And like I love about your tools, like it's not just like, oh, I can do this faster, so now I just save 2 hours so I can go play basketball or whatever. It's like you can save 2 hours that you can now spend that next 2 hours doing something valuable, right? Or like the amount of value that you can now add to like a client is 10x more because of something like this, right? Where this would have taken, with that one client you mentioned, where that would have taken what, a month, 2 months to like go through all
Yeah.
of those, right? Like that's a
Right.
month or 2 months of like hours that they're committed to that like now is tied up in this, right? Versus now it's just 4 hours, right? A day,
Yeah.
right? Which is crazy.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's like, and it makes the redirects a lot more better and more effective because once you, if you're dealing with a list that large, you start just putting in more higher, higher top level type redirects. This one, it will actually look for similarities with the wording within the slugs, and it will say like, okay, well, this 404 error talks about H1 tags or whatever, and there's not a good, we could redirect it to the just general blog page, but there's another blog talking about H1 tags here that's a little bit different, so it will make that mapping for that actual 404 error. So it's a lot more of an intentful redirect, and yeah, and that's kind of the whole value proposition of red tools. It's like, it's not something to like, you put it in and then you check it off the list and it's done, but it's to help automate the tasks that become tedious, so that you get you 80 to 90% of the way there, so where you could just overview it and you're like, oh, okay, this did a pretty good job, let me figure out where I need to make tweaks, because it's not going to be perfect and stuff, especially on the AI tools. Same with ChatGPT. If you're using that, you still have to go through and make some edits, even if it's outputting something for client facing content or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, nothing's gonna be 100% perfect, but like
Mm-hmm.
um the suck of it
Mm-hmm.
sometimes of it, right?
Yeah,
Some of these
yeah.
processes, like I think your tools do a really good job of taking the suck out of it,
Right.
and like just making it a lot more streamlined. And it doesn't feel like when you look at like a whole list of 404s that you got to deal with on your Asana list, you're not looking at that task and being like, oh,
Yeah,
I gotta
right.
spend the next 3 days dealing with 404s, right? It's like, oh, I'm just gonna drop this in, have it
Mm-hmm.
pull it out, clean it up, and then boom, I'm ready to go
Yeah.
to start working on it.
Exactly. And that's one reason why I wanted to include that confidence score too. Like, I use it for this one, and the internal linking tool as well. Probably another one, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's a way where you can easily audit the output as well. So you can say like, oh, okay, let me, the ones that are in the 80% or higher, are probably going to be good just from using the tool so much and then understanding the patterns. So then you can just start at the bottom of the list and be like, okay, this is, instead of having to focus one on the task itself of redirecting everything, now I just need to focus on this small subset of the output that, instead of spending half a day on this, it only takes me 30 minutes. I don't know, or whatever it is.
Yeah, totally,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Right on, man. That's really cool,
Cool.
man. That's really cool.
Awesome. Yeah, man.
All
Thank
right,
you. Heck yeah.
I'm gonna share my screen.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm so excited. Whenever you got something new cooking, it gets me stoked.
I'm still in idea phase on this, but
Uh-huh.
the idea that I had, I was just thinking about. I've been thinking a lot about like as we create content, especially as we create content with AI, and like
Mm-hmm.
everyone's AI content is going to look exactly the same. What's going to be like the differentiating factor? And I think
Mm-hmm.
one of them is going to be just like design of the content UX, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think that's going to be really important. So I've been thinking about like how do I approach content design as I create it. The model before has always been like make your content scannable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Assume you have hear things like F-shaped content,
Right.
adding things in like bolds and lists. But when I think about that a little bit more, I'm thinking that's really an old model. That
Mm-hmm.
model was created. That scannable content model was created before mobile and before social
Yeah.
media. It's really built for desktop. I'm doing a bunch of web browsing, and then I look at, I'm on like a page with a whole bunch of text. So I might scan through the bold, scan through the lists, but that's not really actually what happens now. For me, my own
Mm-hmm.
personal reading data is, or reading habits is, I'll get on a page and I'm just scrolling, and I'm
Yeah.
scrolling until something stops me, right? Just like I would do
Mm-hmm.
on
Right.
Instagram, just like I would do on TikTok, except it's just a swipe at that point, right? Same concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's really my habits. Is like I'm scrolling until something stops me. So I actually
Right.
think that's the model that we should move towards in terms of like how do you design content that's engaging from less
Mm-hmm.
of a I should bold this word because they're going to scan it, right? Versus a I should make a headline like stop, make a person stop, right? Like create a
Right.
hook on that headline that makes a person stop. So that's the model that I'm working towards. I've been working with like ChatGPT and just like having this like really super long conversation that I'm having with it, to try to sort of
Mm-hmm.
outline what I have in my head and put it all together. Here's what I have so far. I just talked about like this idea from like scanning to scrolling, right? And like as you're creating content, you want people to find a place where they can stop and engage with it. This next one here, lead with hooks, not with just keywords. So think about like our headlines. Our headlines are often like super SEO-y, right? Like
Right.
if I'm writing about B2B marketing, I might have a headline of benefits of B2B marketing, but that's not
Mm-hmm.
going to stop anyone. That's just like me playing the SEO game.
Right.
I
Right.
need something that actually gets people to stop. So maybe, here's some examples here. Sorry if I make it a little bit bigger. Here's a part no one tells you. Most guys miss this crucial step,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like these type of things to make people stop. Structure for scrollability, right? Not scannability. One of the ideas, I don't know if I have this in here. Yeah, I'll skip to this section.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ideas I really like is like within a long piece of content, right? You got a 2,000 word piece of content, right? And there's going to be some chunks of of paragraphs that's going to be like sort of long and dense. Can you sort of mimic it, mix in what I would call like short form content into that long form content? So short form, just like you would do from a social media perspective, you would have short form posts, long form posts, right? I would consider
Mm-hmm.
short form like a bullet list or some sort of one liner or call out box or an FAQ or like a key insights or key takeaways or a TLDR box, right? Like mix in these
Yeah.
short form things where they can get a condensed amount of value in like a short area. And then they can decide if they want to read more, they can expand into that sort of longer form part of that section.
Yeah.
So really like that. Um, this idea of sort of the same sort of concept, this idea of like snackability. So accordions, expandable sections, FAQs, really the idea that like at every point of your scroll, you should be providing some sort of snackable thing that they
Mm-hmm.
can think in. I think about this as well for like images as well. I really like I did a post the other day on Investopedia and how
Mm-hmm.
they do glossaries.
Oh
They do
yeah.
this a lot, right? Like here's this a sort of snackable key takeaway section that like if I'm just scrolling, I can just sort of stop here and get some value out of it. Or if I'm scrolling, I can stop here on this image, right, and get some value out of this image, or I can scroll
Mm-hmm.
here and then stop here and get some value out of this call out box, right? So really like that. This idea of like designing for the dopamine loop. I'm still thinking about this, but think about like social media, right? We talk about social media as this thing that scientists and engineers have designed for dopamine purposes. I think
Mm-hmm.
we could do the same thing on like SEO blog posts or content. Um, we do this for me. The way I think about this, or a place to think about this, is just like creating like aha moments. I wish I had
Mm-hmm.
an example to pull up where I can um, uh, point that out. But like thinking about like, can you engineer those aha moments? So when
Mm-hmm.
you read a piece of content and you have like a oh I didn't think about it that way moment, that's
Right. Right.
dopamine shooting in your head, right?
Yeah.
Can you now? My thing is like, can you engineer that so that at multiple points during the scrolling process, you hit
Mm-hmm.
a oh moment, right? That's
Right.
a
Right.
sort of dopamine loop that gets created. So thinking about that, optimizing for mobile, obviously, and then I just talked about like that short form idea. So this is still super early stage, but something that I'm gonna sort of flesh out and hopefully in this next week put out a more longer guide on this, a longer playbook on
Mm-hmm.
this. But it's just this idea of like scroll stopping versus
Mm-hmm.
scanning, right? Moving away from
Yeah.
this idea that like, hey, we're on desktop and we're just scanning through and just looking for keywords and things like that. Versus for
Mm-hmm.
the last 15 years, our browsing habits has been go onto a platform and scroll until something stops us, right? And our job
Yeah.
is to make something stop.
Dude, this is so good. I think this is like what you're trying to do is literally the missing puzzle piece of the next like phase of SEO content optimization. Like I feel like what's happened in the last 2 years is like just posting a blog post in the traditional way that SEOs have been doing for the last however long. Now it's that medium is like starting to depreciate because it's like it's being replaced by LLMs. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So
yeah,
like if you could figure out to bring those elements and assets onto your blog and to make it like what you were saying, like some sort of interactive components,
yeah,
whether it's getting called out through like key features or like key ideas or takeaways, and then or like some sort of accordion or something. I think that's the next the next phase of the game, so to speak, and like trying to derive a moat around your content and to keep your stuff still, the user still coming to the website, so an LLM can't replace that, so to speak. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Dude, I
I
think it's
totally agree.
so good, so
Nice,
good.
nice. Thanks, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think the real idea that I'm thinking about is like if I built a blog post, right?
yeah.
I've got to almost consider that as its own feed, right?
Hmm.
And so now, if I think about it from that perspective, from
Hmm.
scrolling through that blog post, what's going to get me to stop? I got to find places where like maybe I'm using like a heat map tool or a scroll tracking
Hmm.
tool, and I got to find places where people are scrolling past. A
Yeah,
heat map tool will tell you where people are stopping, right? Um,
right.
and so if I'm using like a heat map tool, I should optimize for the stop, right? If
Yeah,
there's just like a heat map will have like a red area where it's hot where people are hanging on, and then blue areas where people just smoking past through it. If
right.
that's if my whole thing is blue, there's no way that content's gonna perform. I've
Hmm.
got to create those hot spots throughout
Yeah,
the
yeah.
article, right? And so like it's almost like as I view each page, I've got to consider it as its own feed, right?
Hmm.
And um, in the same way that like if someone's on my LinkedIn profile or my Instagram profile, right?
Hmm.
If they're just viewing my profile and they're just swiping and swiping and swiping and
Right.
swiping, I've given no value to them, right? Like I've
Yeah,
got to find ways to get them to stop that swipe.
right.
And so yeah, that's the way I think I'm going to approach content going forward, especially like blog content. The other
Yeah.
thing I think about is like I think landing pages or like sales pages sort of
Hmm.
naturally do this, which is why I think often those pages have way more engagement than a
Hmm.
blog post was, even your best
Right.
performing blog post, right? Because they
Yeah.
naturally have a bunch of links that you can click on, and they have these places, these headlines where you scroll and
Hmm.
you stop, and you scroll and you stop, and you scroll and you stop, and you scroll and you stop,
Right.
right? It's like naturally
Yeah.
built into it, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I think just bringing that model over the blog post.
I think it's so smart. Dude, yeah, you're basically figuring out how to engineer the like when you see like invest sites like Investopedia, right, who have like probably huge content teams that are all collaborating on these single content pieces and putting in these assets.
Yep.
Like if you could figure out a way to engineer that into however you're going to do it, oh my gosh, huge value.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so. And then I
yeah.
think, after I build this and play around with it, get some data from that, then it's like, okay, now how
Hmm.
do I put a piece of content into an LLM, into an agent, and say,
Yeah.
now take this piece of content and update it to fit this model. That's sort of the
Right,
next
exactly.
iteration of that. So
Yeah, that's the next puzzle piece. Well, I'm
yeah,
excited, dude. I'm
yeah,
excited to see what happens with it.
cool, man.